What's up, guys? Okay, so I know the title of this video seems kind of jokey, and I mean, sure, it's kind of funny, but this is a really weird subject in history that I haven't really seen anyone make a video about. It's strange that this was actually such an important art form in ancient and medieval times. So while it is kind of humorous, it's also a fascinating history that not too many people know about. It's not supposed to be a super serious video, and I have a big But in the meantime, I figured this would be something interesting to cover for a small video. So yeah, this is kind of the history of farting, and I think it kind of exposes the silliness of the history that we've been told. Well, let's start with ancient times, or what we're told is from ancient times. But apparently, farting was a really big deal. Like philosophers writing on it and emperors making laws on it, it was literally an art form. St. Augustine, one of the most important Christian philosophers, commented in his 5th century work, The City of God, discussing, quote, people who could produce at will, without any stench, such rhythmical sounds from their fundament that they appear to be making music even from that quarter, end quote. He claimed to have seen someone in such control of his backside that he could break wind at will and follow the tone of verses spoken to him. I'm telling you, this gets extremely weird. But back in the 1st century AD, the Roman Emperor Claudius actually made it legal to fart at banquets because he was worried people might hurt themselves trying to hold it in. Like, imagine being in ancient Rome around 41 AD, and your emperor is just like, you know what, guys, let it rip. It's much healthier that way. So, in ancient times, farting wasn't just something people awkwardly pretended didn't happen. It was a big deal. Like, we're talking about farts literally changing the course of history. Seriously. Back in 569 BC, a single fart helped overthrow a kingdom. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote about how King Apries of Egypt sent his general Amasis to deal with some rebels. Instead,
Alrighty. I don't know. We got Amelia today. I don't know why that this right here keeps on happening. I don't get it, but I can take and just keep on going around till I catch up to whichever one that this is. But I'm going to just pull it back down here because I really don't need it up here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to sew. Let me get this right here off because I don't need it. And I am going to sew this down, and I'm going to take it one way and then take it another way. I don't know why it's doing it. I don't understand it. I've been pulling them. And all that good stuff. Oh, come on. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is turn it around and take it back. I got it. I gotta do it this way, it'd be a whole lot easier. Oh, come on, don't go in there. I can't turn it. So I'm gonna do it this way. Are you kidding me? No. Shit. Nah, okay. I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna leave it. Ain't nothing I can do about it. I'm not gonna take it all back apart. So grab that one, and I'm gonna pull it through this one. Alright. And it's not gonna matter. I don't understand it, why it's doing this. Am I not paying close attention to it? Am I not pulling it tight enough? What is it? Alright, now, I want to make sure I don't cut into my threads. Oh, great. Okay, there's that.
The rebels were like, hey, you should be king instead, and crowned Amasis. When the king sent his advisor Petar Bemis to sort things out, Amasis just farted and told him to carry that back to Apries. King Apries didn't take this disrespect well. He had his messenger's nose and ears cut off, which turned out to be a pretty bad move. The Egyptian people were so outraged by this that they eventually turned against Apries, tore him apart in a mob, and Amasis ended up ruling Egypt for the next 44 years. All because of a fart. That's not something they teach you in history class. But wait, it gets even wilder. In 44 AD, a single fart in Jerusalem led to one of the deadliest incidents in ancient history. According to Josephus, who wrote about it in the Jewish War, Josephus describes an anti-Semitic Roman soldier who dropped his pants before a crowd of Jews celebrating Passover. The guy, quote, pulled back his garment and, cowering down after an indecent manner, turned his breech to the Jews and spake such words as you might expect upon such a posture, end quote, which led to people starting to throw stones at the soldiers. The situation escalated so quickly that when the Roman army showed up, about 10,000 people died in the chaos, mostly from being trampled while trying to escape. So literally, a fart led to the death of 10,000 people in the first century. Apparently, the oldest joke ever recorded is a fart joke from ancient Samaria around 1900 BC. It goes, something which has never occurred since time immemorial. A young woman did not fart in her husband's lap. The philosopher Pythagoras believed the soul, pneuma, was breath, and because a fart was a sort of breath, as he was struggling with the mechanics of trigonometry, he was also concerned that if a person pushed hard enough, they might fart out his or her soul. And get this, some ancient cultures even had fart gods. The Innu people of Canada worshipped Mashishkapeu, literally the fart man, who they considered one of their most powerful spirits. Every fart was believed to be a message from this god, and they actually had special interpreters to explain what each fart meant. Then there's the story of Crepitus, the Roman god of farting. Now, mainstream historians will tell you that this was just made up by Christian writers to mock pagan religions, but it's interesting. The story goes that Romans would actually make libations and offerings to this god. According to accounts, the Athenians saw farts as good omens, while Roman priests would curse them. The Emperor Claudius supposedly even had Crepitus at his dinner table. Whether or not Crepitus was real, it's fascinating that this god of farts was important enough to be written about by major historical figures like Voltaire and Flaubert. And we know that the Romans had gods for everything else. They had gods of toilets, doorways, even gardens. So a god of farting doesn't seem that far-fetched. There is a scene from Aristophanes' The Clouds in which Athenians compare thunder to the sound of celestial flatulence. So perhaps there is a truth to this. The ancient Greeks actually took farts pretty seriously as divine messages. There's this old Homeric hymn about the god Hermes where he farts while Apollo is holding him, and is described as a hard-worked belly serf, a rude messenger. basically a divine omen. And this wasn't just a joke, it was divination, which was a huge deal in ancient Greece. And apparently, farts were one way the gods could send messages. This is literal fart magic. There were those who practiced the reading of flames, a method known as pyromancy, while others listened to and channeled demons contained within their bellies. This was a form of ancient divination. It seems this is why Egyptian priests wouldn't eat beans. According to Herodotus, they were trying to avoid any unexpected divine messages, if you get what I mean. So moving into medieval times, farting started to transform from something religious or magical into an actual respected form of entertainment. And when I say respected, I mean you could literally get rich and famous from it. But before we get to the professional farters, we need to talk about this weird farting monster. There is this creature called the bonacon that shows up in manuscripts from the 1300s. But supposedly it was actually first written about by Pliny the Elder way back in ancient Rome. They described it as this bizarre bull-like creature with a horse's mane and these totally useless horns that curved inward. But what made it unique was its signature defense mechanism. Apparently, this thing could blast its pursuers with burning poop and farts that could scorch everything within 3 acres. We're talking about being able to shoot this stuff over 100 Roman feet, which is like 31 meters. Medieval monks were so fascinated by this farting beast that they kept including it in their bestiaries. They have all these depictions of hunters getting blasted by the bonacon's fiery defense system. What I find strange is there's all this information on the importance of farts from ancient times and even an ancient farting beast. And then we don't hear anything about it for 1,000 years. Nothing at all on farting until around the 1200s. Now all of a sudden, farting has become the height of entertainment. So yeah, this gets into Roland the Farter. He was a professional farter who performed for King Henry II of England in the 12th century. His signature move was this combination of a jump, a whistle, and a fart. And apparently he was so good at it that the king gave him a whole manor house and 100 acres of land in Suffolk. Imagine being so good at farting that you get a mansion for it. And okay, are we going to question why this was entertaining to a king during these times? It's just strange that medieval nobles actually loved crude humor. The cruder the better. We're talking about a time when people would pay to watch mystery plays where devils would run around farting at the audience. Supposedly this profession was widespread in Ireland throughout medieval times. For example, a tradition of 8th century Irish records lists brogadore, or farters, as those who held retainers in courts. Roland's contemporaries, a group of Irish farters called brigatori, allegedly occupied a table at the banquet hall of the High King of Ireland. But farting wasn't just for laughs in medieval times. It was actually a powerful form of political protest. Geoffrey Chaucer, one of the most important writers of the time in the 14th century, wrote this scene where an angel shows a friar around hell, and when the friar is feeling smug about not seeing any other friars there, Satan literally opens his ass and 20,000 friars come swarming out like bees from a hive. In his Summoner's Tale, there's this old man who gets revenge on a greedy friar by saying, "Hey, I've got something to show you." And when the friar reaches behind the old man expecting to find some money, he gets a fart so powerful that Chaucer says no horse could have matched it. When the friar goes to complain, someone suggests he should share this gift fairly by having 12 friars kneel around a cartwheel with their noses at the spokes while he farts in the middle. That's kind of detailed. Even Shakespeare couldn't resist a good fart joke. In Two Gentlemen of Verona, there's this scene where a guy gives his crush a dog named Crab as a gift. The issue is Crab has some serious digestive issues, The dog ends up farting under the Duke's dinner table so bad that everyone wanted the dog whipped, but the servant actually takes the blame for the fart to protect the dog. In Shakespeare's Henry IV, Part 1, there's a scene where a character named Owen Glendower tries to make himself sound important by claiming that when he was born, the earth shook and the heavens were on fire. Another character, Harry Hotspur, responds by telling him that these weren't actually signs of his greatness. The earth was just sick and farting that day. Shakespeare writes this in poetic language about unruly wind trapped in the earth's womb, basically turning a fart joke into elegant poetry. The medieval criticism of religious corruption through farting actually helped spark major religious change. After Martin Luther was excommunicated from the Catholic Church in 1521, he fought back in a pretty unique way. He commissioned a series of protest artworks called The True Depiction of the Papacy, and he had this artist create some interesting woodcuts. One of them is called The Birth and the Origin of the Pope, which showed a female demon literally pooping out a pope. Then in 1545, there's this other one called The Papal Belvedere, showing German peasants farting at Pope Paul III in his official documents. During the years 1641 to 1660, when Puritans were basically trying to kill all fun in England by closing theaters and banning public dancing, people found creative ways to rebel. John Playford started this secret singing club in 1649 that was actually raising money for out-of-work musicians. One of their most popular songs was called My Lady and Her Maid, which was all about farting. So yeah, while the Puritans were trying to make everything seriously and godly, these educated musicians were literally having secret meetings to sing about farts. According to John Aubrey's writings, Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, once accidentally let out a huge fart while bowing to Queen Elizabeth I. He was so embarrassed that he left the country for 7 years. When he finally came back, Queen Elizabeth supposedly welcomed him by saying, "My lord, I had forgot the fart." In the early 1700s, Thomas Durfee and Jonathan Swift specifically used farting in their writing to mock women. Durfee even wrote this infamous 37-verse poem called The Fart, about trying to find out who farted in front of the Queen. Later, Swift wrote a whole pamphlet called The Benefit of Farting Explained, under the fake name Don Ferdinando Puff Endorsed. Unlike earlier fart humor that was meant to be funny or rebellious, these writers were saying that women's opinions were as worthless as hot air. But what I find to be wild is some of the most beautiful and expensive books from medieval times. I mean, we're talking about religious manuscripts that took incredible skill and money to make, are absolutely filled with fart jokes in the margins. These weren't just random doodles either. Making these books was serious business. They had to turn animal skin into paper, use gold leaf, and spent months creating just one book. But around the edges of these holy texts, there are naked bishops farting, people playing trumpets from both ends, and apes blowing wind instruments into each other's butts. There's actually a whole musical connection with farting here. The Latin word bombus meant fart, which is why they called certain wind instruments bombards. And flatus, which gave us the word flatulence, was used in music to describe breathing into instruments. When you think about it, the whole concept of wind instruments might have started with people trying to imitate or replicate different kinds of, well, natural wind sounds. The connection between the mouth pipe and the other end was so strong that medieval writers like Dante literally described demons making trumpets of their butts. Even the great artist Hieronymus Bosch got in on this in his famous painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights. In the Hell panel, he shows sinners being tortured with bum notes, including one poor guy whose butt is being used as a musical score by a frogman hybrid. So, okay, we're told that these medieval monks were copying religious texts, but what's with all the fart jokes? They actually taught these dirty Latin words in school. There are these old textbooks where kids had to learn words like torde in thy teethe, turd in your teeth, right alongside their regular lessons. So next time someone tells you people in medieval times were all serious and religious, just remember they were literally teaching kids fart words in Latin class. Interestingly, Japan actually has an incredible history of fart artistry going back to the Kamakura era between the 12th and 14th centuries. The most famous of these early performers was Fukutomi no Oribe, known as the King of Farts, who made his fortune performing fart dances for aristocrats. There's a story about him and his neighbor Toda, who got jealous of Oribe's success and tried to learn the art of professional farting. Well, it didn't end well. Toda took some mysterious pills from Oribe and ended up having a very messy, very public accident at a nobleman's house. But it was during the Edo period when farting really became an art form in Japan. The streets of Tokyo had these shows called misemono, where you could see all kinds of unusual performers, including a guy known as the Mist Descending Flower Blossom Man. In 1774, this performer became famous for taking in air and releasing it in what scholars actually describe as modulated flatulent arias. Like, this guy was literally doing musical compositions with his farts. The Japanese were so into fart-based entertainment that they created these art scrolls called higasen, literally fart battles. These were elaborate battle scenes where people were using farts as weapons, blasting each other through walls, uprooting trees, and sending animals flying through the air. People would try to defend themselves with fans and face masks against these wind attacks. They even showed people trapping farts in bags to use as weapons later. While some people have tried to say that these were political statements about foreigners, they were really just a part of Japan's long tradition of bathroom humor and art, dating all the way back to the 12th century. In the late 1800s, Joseph Pujol, better known as La Petoman, which literally means the maniac farter, became France's most unusual celebrity entertainer. After discovering as a young swimmer that he could draw water into his rectum, he learned he could do the same with air and control its release with remarkable precision. Unlike other farters, Pujol wasn't actually passing gas. He developed a technique where he would inhale air through his mouth and somehow channel it to be released through his rectum. Performing at the famous Moulin Rouge in Paris, he would appear in a formal tuxedo and treat his act like a sophisticated musical performance. His repertoire included playing songs like La Marseillaise, imitating cannon fire and thunderstorms, blowing out candles from several yards away, and even smoking cigarettes with his rear end. La Petoman became so popular that his audiences included the Prince of Wales and King Leopold II of Belgium. He performed until World War I, when he retired from the stage and returned to his original profession as a baker. Interestingly, even in modern times, when La Petoman's story was adapted for theater in 2001, several theaters rejected it, claiming their audiences were too sophisticated for the subject matter. And this really points out to something ironic about our entire history. We're told that ancient and medieval people were capable of creating these magnificent architectural works, impossibly complex cathedrals, perfect stone structures, and engineering marvels. Yet at the same time, these supposedly advanced builders were completely obsessed with farting. If you've seen the video on waste management and poop fuel, you might see where I'm going with this. But think about it. How do we reconcile a society that was supposedly sophisticated enough to build these incredible structures, yet they were throwing waste into the streets and building massive entertainment culture around farting? More importantly, why didn't any of these magnificent buildings have proper bathrooms or sewage systems? It's almost as if these people who built these structures didn't need them. What makes more sense is that these medieval fart enthusiasts weren't the builders, they were the inheritors of these cities after the reset. When their diet and energy source changed, they suddenly had to deal with bodily functions that their predecessors didn't have. They were literally discovering farting for the first time, which explains why they found it so fascinating and entertaining. It doesn't make too much sense that people who were throwing their poop on the street, getting drunk, and entertained with farts would be responsible with the construction of many of these structures, and more likely points to the fraudulent nature of our history. It would seem that many of the ancient references of farting are really just from the medieval age after the reset. The civilizations before the reset likely didn't experience these bodily functions the same way. They were in harmony with nature, living off fruits and proper breathing techniques. What we're seeing in these supposed medieval times is actually the documentation of a society struggling to adapt to new bodily functions, most likely brought on by the consumption of meat and the fall from that higher state of being. That's my take anyways, but tell me your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.
They have a page here, and it says, almost every night when I wake up, the devil is there and wants to dispute with me. I have come to the conclusion when the argument that the Christian is without the law and above the law doesn't help, instantly chase him away with a fart. Martin Luther, Tabletop, 469.